Once upon a time, in a large and bustling city of Lagos, there lived a billionaire named Paul. He had everything a man could dream of: fancy cars, a mansion, and more money than he could ever spend. But despite all his wealth, Paul felt lonely. He knew people only saw his money and power, not his heart. Paul had been in many relationships, but none of them worked out. Women only liked him because he had money, not because he was a kind man who wanted real love. Each failed relationship left him lonelier than before. Friends called him Oga Billionaire, but behind closed doors, Paul longed for someone who would see beyond his bank account. One evening, sitting alone on his balcony overlooking the glittering lights of Lagos, Paul came up with an idea that would change his life forever. He decided to leave everything behind: the mansions, the cars, the fame, and go undercover as a beggar in a small rural village far away from the city. He believed that if he could find someone who cared for him when he appeared poor and helpless, then maybe, just maybe, they would truly love him for who he was. The next morning, Paul told his parents his plan. His mother, Mrs. Ngozi, begged him to change his mind. "Paul, my son," she said, crying, "this is too risky. What if someone finds out who you are? You could get hurt." His father, Chief Adeyemi, scolded him. "You're making a big mistake, boy. People will use you. Stop this nonsense." But Paul was determined. "I have to do this," he replied firmly. "I need to know if anyone can truly love me for me." The next day, Paul packed a few old clothes and some coins to look real. He went to a quiet village called Umukwu. There, he dressed as a beggar, covered his face with dirt, and sat by the road. He held out his hand and started begging. "Please help me," he whispered, hoping someone would stop. He felt nervous and scared. It was the first time in his life he had ever asked for anything from strangers. For days, Paul sat on the street, watching people pass by. Most ignored him, and some just glanced at him before leaving. He had never felt so invisible. Lagos felt far away from the quiet village of Umukwu. He was lonely but kept reminding himself why he was there: to find true love. Then one day, a young lady approached him. Her name was Amara, and she was unlike anyone Paul had ever met. Amara worked tirelessly alongside her father, Pa Chibuzo, on their small farm. Despite their struggles, Amara carried herself with grace and kindness. That day, as she passed Paul, she paused and looked into his eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, kneeling beside him. "You look so tired." Paul hesitated, unused to such compassion. "I'm just trying to survive," he murmured, lowering his gaze. Without hesitation, Amara reached into her bag and handed him a piece of bread wrapped in newspaper. "Take this," she said gently. "It's not much, but it's all I have right now." Paul felt a lump in his throat. Her kindness touched him in a way that money never had. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You don't know how much this means to me." Over the next few weeks, Amara continued to check on Paul, bringing him food and water whenever she could. One rainy afternoon, Amara thought for a moment. "I live with my father. Our house is small, but I would have loved to help you. I don't know if my father will agree to it." When she got home, she informed her father about the beggar on the street, and her father said, "You can't leave him out there alone in the night," he finally said. "No one should be left to suffer when we have a roof over our heads. Go back and bring him here. We'll make room for him." Amara smiled, grateful for her father's compassion. Without wasting any time, she grabbed her shawl and hurried back to the spot where she had left the man. When she returned, Paul was still sitting where he is, looking lost in thought. She approached him carefully, her soft voice cutting through the evening air. "My father said you can't stay out here alone tonight," she said gently. "Come with me. We'll give you a place to sleep." Paul blinked, surprised by the offer. He had never expected such kindness from strangers, and his heart swelled with emotion. "I don't know what to say," he stammered. "You don't have to say anything," Amara replied with a kind smile. "Just let us help you." With Amara's assistance, Paul made his way back to her small, humble home. As he crossed the threshold, he couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth and safety that he hadn't felt in a long time. Amara and her father had so little, yet they were willing to share what they had with a man they barely knew. As Paul settled into the modest room they had prepared for him, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he had finally found what he was looking for. But with his heart full of gratitude, he also felt a growing sense of guilt. He was living a lie, pretending to be something he was not. Days turned into weeks, and Paul settled into the small village of Umukwu. The villagers were warm and welcoming, though they lived simple lives filled with hard work and little luxury. Pa Chibuzo and Amara continued to care for him as if he were part of their family. Each morning, Amara would bring him breakfast and sit with him for a few moments before heading out to the farm. Amara liked spending time with Paul. She talked to him about her dreams and her life on the farm. Paul admired her strength. Despite her struggles, she carried herself with grace and always wore a smile that lit up even the darkest corners of his heart. He found himself looking forward to these quiet moments with her, where they talked about life, dreams, and the beauty of nature around them. For the first time in years, Paul felt truly seen, not for his wealth, but for who he really was inside. One evening, as the sun set, Amara joined Paul in the small garden. They sat together on a wooden bench Pa Chibuzo had made. "You seem happier here," Amara said softly, glancing at Paul. "I can see it in your eyes." Paul smiled faintly, touched by her observation. "I am," he admitted. "Being here, being with you and your father, it's made me realize what truly matters." Amara nodded thoughtfully. "Life isn't about having much. It's about sharing what little you have and finding joy in the simple things." Her words touched Paul deeply. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he wasn't really poor but had left a life of great wealth to find something meaningful. But every time he tried, guilt stopped him. How could he explain without breaking the trust they had built? One afternoon, Amara brought Paul to meet her close friend, Favor, who lived nearby. Favor was known for her sharp tongue and quick judgments, and she wasted no time judging Paul. Favor dragged Amara to one side. "What's this?" Favor asked, eyeing Paul suspiciously. "A beggar. Why are you keeping him around, Amara?" Amara frowned, defensive. "He's kind and hard-working. That's all I need to know." Favor shook her head. "Mark my words, Amara, he's trouble. Stay away from him." Though Amara dismissed Favor's warnings, the seed of doubt lingered in her mind. Still, she continued to treat Paul with kindness, unaware of the truth behind his disguise. Meanwhile, Pa Chibuzo observed Paul closely. Though he never voiced his suspicions, the older man couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Paul than met the eye. One afternoon, while working in the fields, Pa Chibuzo decided to confront him gently. "Paul," he began, wiping sweat from his brow, "you've been with us for some time now, and I must say, you're not like other beggars I've seen." Paul froze, his heart racing. Had Pa Chibuzo figured him out? "What do you mean?" he asked cautiously. Pa Chibuzo chuckled warmly. "Don't look so worried, my boy. I only mean that you carry yourself differently. There's strength in you, even though you pretend to be weak. It makes me wonder, why did you choose this path?" Paul hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Sometimes we need to lose everything to find what's truly important," he said finally, choosing his words carefully. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Pa Chibuzo studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Well, whatever your reasons, I'm glad you're here. You've brought light into our home." Though touched by Pa Chibuzo's kindness, Paul felt the weight of his deception growing heavier. He knew he couldn't keep living this lie forever. But for now, he pushed those thoughts aside and focused on enjoying the warmth of the family who had taken him in. A few days later, Paul noticed that Amara and Pa Chibuzo were struggling to make ends meet. Their cassava farm wasn't producing enough crops to sell at the market. Paul secretly went to the city and returned with bags of fertilizer and new farming tools. He left them outside their house early in the morning before anyone woke up. When Amara and Pa Chibuzo saw the gifts, they were shocked. Who could have done this? Amara wondered aloud. Paul smiled but didn't say anything. He hoped they would think it was a kind stranger. But not everyone in the village was pleased. Some people began to whisper. In Lagos, Paul's parents, Chief Adeyemi and Ngozi, grew worried. Weeks passed with no news from him. Ngozi prayed every night, her heart heavy. "Where is he?" she cried. "He should have told us where he went." Chief Adeyemi tried to stay calm for his wife. "He's fine," he told her, though he sounded unsure. "He probably just needed a break." But deep down, Chief Adeyemi couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He worried. Had Paul been kidnapped? Was he hurt? Or worse, had something bad happened to him in an unfamiliar place? As the days passed, Ngozi prayed harder, hoping Paul was safe. She didn't know he was safe and finding the love he had always wanted. In Umukwu, Paul changed not only his life but also those around him. Amara admired his strength and kindness, while Pa Chibuzo noticed how Paul valued even small acts of care. Together, they built a bond that went beyond wealth, status, and secrets. But unknown to them, challenges lay ahead, challenges that would test their trust, their love, and their ability to forgive. One day, Pa Chibuzo fell ill. He couldn't work on the farm, and the family needed money to pay for medicine. Amara sold some of their belongings to raise funds, but it wasn't enough. Desperate, Pa Chibuzo made a difficult decision. He sold their ancestral land to a wealthy businessman who wanted to build a factory in the village. When Paul learned about the sale, he felt guilty. He knew he could easily solve their financial problems by revealing his true identity, but he feared losing the trust and love Amara and Pa Chibuzo had given him. Meanwhile, back in Lagos, Chief Adeyemi grew impatient. He had been planning a lucrative partnership with a wealthy ally, Chief Okafor, and needed Paul to marry Chioma, Chief Okafor's daughter, to solidify the deal. A few days after Pa Chibuzo sold their ancestral land, something happened that changed everything. A man from the city arrived in Umukwu. His name was Chief Adam, a wealthy businessman and a close friend of Paul's father, Chief Adeyemi. Chief Adam came to check on some work in the Umukwu and saw Paul sitting outside the house. He shouted, "Paul, what are you doing here? Your father has been looking everywhere for you." Amara and Pa Chibuzo were shocked. They looked at Paul and asked, "Do you know Chief Adam?" He was speechless. Chief Adam faced Pa Chibuzo. "Paul is my friend's son, a wealthy man in a big city of Lagos. Is this true? Are you really the Paul he is talking about?" Amara asked. Paul nodded slowly, his heart heavy with guilt. He knew he couldn't hide anymore. "Yes, I am the Paul," he admitted. "But I didn't mean to lie to you. I came here because I wanted to find real love. I wanted to see if someone could love me for who I am, not for my money." Amara felt angry and hurt. "You lied to us," she said, her voice trembling. "We thought you were poor. We gave you everything we had. And now we find out you're rich." Pa Chibuzo was quiet, but his eyes filled with sadness. He had trusted Paul completely, believing him to be a helpless man in need of care. Now he realized Paul had been pretending all along. Chief Adam shook his head. "Paul, your father is very upset. You need to come back to the city with me." Paul didn't want to leave. He loved Amara and Pa Chibuzo. But he knew he couldn't stay. Not after what he had done. Before he left, Paul promised them, "I will fix this. I will make things right." Amara didn't say anything. She just watched as Paul got into Chief Adam's car and drove away. Back in Lagos, Chief Adeyemi learned the truth about Paul's time in Umukwu. He was furious. "How could you throw away everything for some girl from a village?" he demanded. "Have arranged a marriage between you and Chioma, my business partner, beautiful daughter, when you are busy finding love that didn't lost." Paul stood his ground. "I won't marry Chioma or anyone else just for your business plans. I love Amara, and I'm staying true to her." Chief Adeyemi's anger boiled over. He threatened to disown Paul, but Paul didn't back down. For the first time in his life, he chose love over money. Meanwhile, in Umukwu, when Chief Adam arrived in Umukwu and exposed Paul's true identity, the village erupted in shock. Amara felt betrayed, her heart breaking at the realization that Paul had lied to her and her father. Favor saw an opportunity. "See, I told you he wasn't trustworthy," Favor exclaimed when she heard the news. "But now that we know he's rich, maybe it's time for someone else to step in." She smirked, already plotting how she could win Paul's attention. Amara struggled to process her feelings. She had trusted Paul completely, but now she felt betrayed. Could she ever forgive him? As days passed, Amara and Pa Chibuzo worked hard to rebuild their lives on the smaller farm. Amara often thought about Paul, remembering his kindness but struggling to forget his deception. One evening, as the sun set, Amara sat under the mango tree in their small garden. Pa Chibuzo joined her, sitting beside her with a gentle smile. "Amara," he began softly, "love is not always easy. Sometimes, it requires forgiveness." Amara sighed, tears welling up in her eyes. "How can I forgive him, father? He deceived us. He let us give up everything for him." Pa Chibuzo nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Yes, he made mistakes. But people can change, my child. What matters is whether he is willing to make things right." Amara wiped her tears, her heart still conflicted. What if he doesn't? What if he chooses his family's wealth over us? Pa Chibuzo placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Then we must accept it and move on. But until then, we must give him a chance to prove himself." Meanwhile, in Lagos, Paul was trapped. His father kept him under constant watch, forbidding him from contacting Amara or returning to Umukwu. Chief Adeyemi pressured him daily to agree to the marriage with Chioma, but Paul refused to move. One night, Paul decided he couldn't wait any longer. He sneaked out of the mansion and went to see Amara. He drove through the night, his heart pounding with hope and fear. When he arrived at Pa Chibuzo's home, he found Amara sitting alone under the mango tree. "Amara," he whispered, stepping closer. "I'm here. I couldn't stay away." Amara looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and longing. "Why should I believe you, Paul? How do I know you won't leave again?" Paul knelt before her, his voice trembling with emotion. "I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust. But I love you, Amara. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you, if you'll let me." Amara hesitated, her heart torn between love and caution. Finally, she nodded. "Prove it, Paul. Show me that you're willing to fight for us." The weight of betrayal still hung in the air, but there was hope. Over the past few days, Paul worked hard to earn Amara and Pa Chibuzo's trust. He repaired the fence, cleared weeds, and fixed the roof. His simple acts of kindness showed them he was sincere. Over the next few days, Favor went out of her way to get close to Paul. When there is dispute between Amara and him, Favor seized the moment. "You deserve better than her," she whispered, brushing against him as they stood near the well. "Someone who understands your world. Someone like me." Paul stepped back, feeling disgusted by her sudden attention. "Leave me alone, Favor. I love Amara, and nothing you do will change that." Favor's smile disappeared, and she looked angry. "Fine. But don't come running to me when she leaves you." Meanwhile, Amara watched him quietly, feeling both angry and forgiving. She remembered how Paul once seemed so helpless, begging for food by the roadside. Now, she saw him working hard and helping her father in the fields. It was hard to connect the man who had lied to them with the kind person he was showing himself to be now. One evening, as they sat together under the mango tree, Amara finally spoke. "Why did you really come here, Paul? Was it just to escape your life in Lagos?" Paul sighed, choosing his words carefully. "At first, yes. I wanted to find something real, something money couldn't buy. But when I met you and Pa Chibuzo, I found more than I ever expected. I found kindness, acceptance, and love. I never meant to hurt you, Amara. I only wanted to be someone who deserved your trust." Amara looked at him, her expression softening. "You have a long way to go before I can fully trust you again. But I believe you're trying. That's a start." Her words gave Paul hope. He knew he couldn't undo the damage he had caused, but he was grateful for the opportunity to make amends. Together, they began to rebuild their relationship, one small step at a time. Back in Lagos, Chief Adeyemi became very worried. Chief Okafor had heard about Paul's disobedience, and their family partnership was at risk. Chief Adeyemi decided to act quickly. He sent men to Umukwu, telling them to bring Paul back, no matter what it took. When the men arrived at Umukwu, they quickly went into the house and pulled Paul out, even though he tried to stop them. Amara and Pa Chibuzo watched in shock as Paul was put into a car and driven away. As the car raced to Lagos, Paul felt his heart sink. He had worked so hard to leave his father's plans behind, but now he was being forced back into that life. Even though he felt hopeless, he held on to one thought: he wouldn't give up on Amara. No matter what, he would find a way to return to her. Back in Lagos, Chief Adeyemi confronted Paul in his study. "You've played around long enough," he said sternly, slamming his fist on the table. "Your marriage to Chioma has already been arranged. This marriage will secure our family's legacy for generations to come. You cannot throw it all away for some girl from a village." Paul stood his ground, his voice firm. "I won't marry someone I don't love just for your greed. I went to Umukwu to escape that kind of life, to find something real. And I did. Amara is the woman I love, and I won't abandon her for your schemes." Chief Adeyemi stepped closer, his tone threatening. "If you refuse, you'll lose everything: your inheritance, your name, your place in this family. Is that what you want?" Paul met his father's gaze, unwavering. "If that's the price of staying true to myself, then so be it." Paul's resistance left Chief Adeyemi shaken. 4 years, his son had been obedient, following every instruction without question. But now, Paul was standing firm, refusing to abandon Amara and Pa Chibuzo. It was clear that love had changed him, and Chief Adeyemi couldn't accept it. One evening, as he sat alone in his study, Chief Adeyemi devised a new plan. If Paul wouldn't listen to reason, then perhaps Amara and her father would. He decided to invite them to Lagos, offering them money and gifts in exchange for staying away from his son. "They're poor," he thought bitterly. "Surely they'll take the deal." The next morning, Chief Adeyemi called Paul into his office. "I've decided to meet Amara and her father," he said, pretending to be sincere. "Tell them to come to Lagos. I wish to apologize for my behavior and make amends." Paul was surprised. He never thought his father would act so humble. Feeling a small hope, he asked, "Are you serious?" while looking at his father's face. "Yes," Chief Adeyemi replied, forcing a smile. "It's time we put this behind us. Bring them here. I'll ensure they're comfortable." Paul hesitated but eventually agreed. He called Amara, explaining the situation. "Father wants to apologize," he said. His voice was full of careful hope. "He says he wants to make things right." Amara and Pa Chibuzo were skeptical. "Do you trust him?" Amara asked, her tone guarded. "I don't know," Paul admitted. "But if there's even a small chance he means it, we should try. Please, come to Lagos." Reluctantly, Amara and Pa Chibuzo agreed. They packed their belongings and traveled to Lagos, unsure of what awaited them. When Amara and her father arrived in Lagos, Chief Adeyemi greeted them warmly, extending his hand in what appeared to be genuine friendship. "Welcome," he said, ushering them into his mansion. "Please, make yourselves at home." For the first few days, everything seemed fine. Chief Adeyemi showed them around the city, treating them to lavish meals and luxurious accommodations. Paul watched cautiously, still wary of his father's intentions but hopeful that a reconciliation might be possible. One afternoon, Chief Adeyemi invited Amara and Pa Chibuzo to his study. As he closed the door, his attitude changed. "Let's make this quick," he said coldly. "I'll give you a lot of money and I want you to stay away from my son." Amara gasped, her heart pounding with anger. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. "You heard me," Chief Adeyemi snapped. "Take the money and go back to your village. Stay away from Paul, or else I'll ruin you. Do you understand?" Pa Chibuzo stepped forward, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "You can't buy us off," he said firmly. "We care for Paul, and nothing you say or do will change that." Chief Adeyemi sneered. "You think I'm bluffing? I have the power to destroy your lives. Don't test me." Furious and frightened, Amara and Pa Chibuzo left the study, refusing to accept the bribe. Without saying a word to Paul, they packed their belongings and quietly slipped out of the mansion, heading back to Umukwu. They didn't want to risk staying any longer, fearing what Chief Adeyemi might do next. Later that evening, Paul returned to the guesthouse where Amara and Pa Chibuzo had been staying, only to find it empty. Their bags were gone, and there was no sign of them anywhere. Panic gripped him as he searched the mansion frantically, calling out their names. "Amara! Pa Chibuzo!" Paul shouted, his voice echoing through the halls. But there was no response. He tried calling Amara's phone repeatedly, but she didn't pick up. Each unanswered call filled him with fear. Where could they have gone? Why would they leave without telling him? Finally, after hours of anxiety, Amara answered the call. Her voice was cold and distant when she spoke. "Paul, we're back in Umukwu." "What? Why did you leave without saying anything?" Paul asked, confusion and hurt evident in his tone. "Your father threatened us," Amara replied bluntly. "He told us to stay away from you, or else. We couldn't risk staying there, Paul. It's better this way." "No, it's not," Paul exclaimed, desperation creeping into his voice. "Please, let me fix this. I'll handle my father, I promise." "I don't know if you can," Amara said softly before hanging up. Paul stood frozen, his phone slipping from his trembling hand. His father's actions hit him hard, like a huge wave. For years, he had followed his father's orders, never questioning his authority, but now, enough was enough. Without hesitation, Paul stormed into his father's study, slamming the door shut behind him. "How dare you!" he shouted, his voice shaking with anger. "How dare you threaten the people I love?" Chief Adeyemi looked up, startled by his son's outburst. "Paul, no!" Paul interrupted, his eyes blazing with anger. "If anything happens to Amara or her father, if you so much as lay a finger on them, I swear I'll kill you. Do you hear me? I'm done letting you control my life." For the first time in years, Chief Adeyemi saw the depth of his son's pain and the consequences of his own actions. Tears welled up in his eyes as he realized how far he had pushed Paul. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I didn't mean for things to go this far. I just wanted what was best for our family." "Well, this isn't it," Paul shot back. "My happiness is what matters, not your greed, not your ambitions. If you truly care about me, you'll make things right." Chief Adeyemi nodded, overwhelmed by guilt and regret. "I'll fix this," he promised. "I'll apologize to them properly, and I'll give my blessing to you and Amara. Just, please forgive me." The next morning, Chief Adeyemi traveled to Umukwu, carrying the weight of his mistakes. He walked into Pa Chibuzo's house, where Amara sat by her father's side, holding his hand tightly. When she saw Chief Adeyemi, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What are you doing here?" she asked sharply. "I've come to apologize," Chief Adeyemi said, his voice low and humble. "To both of you. What I did was wrong, unforgivable. I let my ambition blind me, and I hurt your family because of it. I can't change the past, but I promise to make things right." Pa Chibuzo, though still wary, managed a faint smile. "Life is short," he said softly. "There's no room for grudges. What matters now is ensuring that our children are happy." Chief Adeyemi nodded, deeply moved by Pa Chibuzo's forgiveness. From that moment on, he vowed to support Paul and Amara, not out of obligation, but because he finally understood the importance of love and compassion. And Paul stayed back in the village to enjoy the moment with Amara. One evening, as Amara and Paul sat together under the mango tree, Favor approached them hesitantly. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically soft. Amara raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Favor took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, for everything. I underestimated Paul and what he means to you. I let jealousy cloud my judgment, and I shouldn't have tried to come between you two." Paul nodded, accepting her apology, while Amara smiled faintly. "Thank you, Favor. That means a lot." From that moment on, Favor stepped back, allowing Amara and Paul to rebuild their bond without interference. With his father's blessing, Paul brought Amara and Pa Chibuzo back to Lagos. Together, they began a new chapter of their lives, building a future filled with love, unity, and mutual respect. Though challenges lay ahead, they faced them together, as a family. Favor attended their simple wedding ceremony, genuinely happy for her friend. As she watched Amara and Paul exchange vows, she realized that true love isn't about wealth or status, it's about finding someone who values you for who you are. And so, Paul, Amara, and Pa Chibuzo lived happily ever after, proving that love, forgiveness, and unity can overcome even the greatest obstacles.
Thanks for watching. What did you think of Paul and Amara's story? Let us know in the comments below. Did love conquer all, or would you have made a different choice? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.